A billionaire was trapped inside a smoking car outside his own luxury resort. His hand shook against the broken steering wheel. His phone lay somewhere beneath the seat. His bodyguard was nowhere in sight. The private entrance behind Hawthorne Crest Resort was almost empty, and the smoke rising from the hood grew thicker with every passing second. Then a woman appeared at the edge of the service road. She wore an old coat, wet shoes, and a maid uniform she no longer had permission to wear. Her name was Eleanor Wren, and only a few nights earlier, the man trapped inside that car had humiliated her in front of wealthy guests. He had looked at her like dirt beneath his polished shoes. He had called her a helpless street girl in a uniform. He had allowed strangers to laugh at her after someone whispered the words, "homeless maid." Now that same homeless maid stood between him and the end of everything he owned, everything he believed, and everything he thought made him untouchable. For 1 second, Eleanor froze. She remembered the ballroom. She remembered the broken glasses. She remembered David Hawthorne's cold voice. "This is not a shelter. If you want charity, find it somewhere else." Now the proud resort CEO was the one who needed mercy, and Eleanor had to choose. Walk away and let him taste the loneliness he gave her, or run toward the smoke and save the life of a man who once treated her like she was nothing. Before we go further, welcome to Romance Tales with Mr. Kingsley. If you love emotional stories about love, forgiveness, family, and life lessons, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And as this story begins, ask yourself one question. If someone mocked you at your lowest, would you save them when they had no one else? David Hawthorne owned some of the most beautiful resorts in America. Hawthorne Crest was known for oceanfront suites, private villas, heated pools, garden restaurants, mountain retreats, and quiet luxury. Rich families booked months ahead. Celebrities used private entrances. Business leaders held secret meetings in rooms with wide balconies and views that made people forget the cost. At 34, David looked like the perfect picture of success. He wore tailored suits. He traveled in quiet black cars. He spoke little, but every room listened when he did. His signature sat on contracts worth millions. His name appeared in business magazines beside words like disciplined, sharp, and unstoppable. But behind the calm face, David carried a cold belief. He believed people with less money always wanted something from people with more. He believed kindness made a man weak. He believed poverty was a problem people created for themselves. That belief did not start with him. It started with his father, Aldrich Hawthorne. Aldrich had built the first Hawthorne resort with borrowed money, hard deals, and a heart that grew colder as the family grew richer. He taught David that respect came from power. He taught him that sympathy made enemies bold. He taught him that a man who listened to sob stories would lose everything to people who smiled while reaching into his pocket. When David was a boy, his mother used to sneak food packages to workers who struggled during the off-season. Aldrich hated it. "You are teaching them to beg," he would say. David remembered his mother's face falling silent. Years later, after she passed away, Aldrich's voice became the only voice left in the house. It shaped David. It hardened him. It made him successful, but it also made him lonely. David did not notice the loneliness at first. He filled his days with meetings. He filled his evenings with investor dinners. He filled his homes with expensive things he barely touched. He had people around him all the time, but almost no one close enough to tell him the truth. That was why he trusted Celeste Arden. Celeste was polished, clever, and always dressed like she had stepped out of a luxury magazine. She served as one of his top business partners. She knew how to smile before cameras and how to destroy a rival in a boardroom without raising her voice. She admired David's ambition and wanted to stand beside his power. People often assumed they were a couple. Celeste did not correct them. David did not care enough to correct them either. To him, romance was a distraction. Love was a risk. Marriage was a legal arrangement dressed in flowers. Children were future heirs who needed training, not tenderness. That was the man David had become before Eleanor Wren entered his resort. Eleanor's life looked nothing like his. She had grown up in a small rented house outside Atlanta with her grandmother, Nola Wren. The house had a narrow porch, a lemon tree in the yard, and walls full of old family photos. Nola did not have much money, but she had enough wisdom to make the house feel rich. Every Sunday she cooked a large pot of soup, even when only 2 people lived there. "Someone hungry always finds their way to a warm kitchen," she used to tell Eleanor. Eleanor believed her. She watched her grandmother feed neighbors, comfort widows, care for children, and pray for people who had nothing to give back. Nola taught her that dignity did not depend on a bank account. She taught her that kindness was not weakness. She taught her to never let another person's cruelty turn her heart bitter. Eleanor wanted to become a social worker. She wanted to open a small support center for women in crisis, a place where women who lost homes, jobs, or safety would find help before shame swallowed them. She attended community college, worked part-time at a diner, and saved every dollar she earned. Then Nola became sick. At first, it was small. Missed church services, long naps, weak hands. Then came doctor visits, hospital stays, medicine, and bills with numbers Eleanor could barely read without panic. Eleanor left school for 1 semester. Then 1 semester became 2. She worked morning shifts at the diner, evening shifts at a laundry service, and weekend cleaning jobs. She told herself she would return to school once Nola recovered. But Nola did not recover. One rainy morning, Eleanor held her grandmother's hand in a hospital room and listened as the woman who raised her took her final breath. After the funeral, silence filled the little house. Then the bills came. The landlord had waited as long as he claimed he could. The house was being sold. Eleanor had 30 days to leave. She sold the couch. She sold the television. She sold Nola's old sewing machine, then cried all night because it felt like letting go of the last sound of her grandmother's hands. At 26, Eleanor packed her life into 2 bags and entered a women's shelter. She did not tell anyone from her old neighborhood. She did not want pity. She did not want people whispering about how far she had fallen. She wanted work. Through a cleaning agency, she found a temporary maid position at Hawthorne Crest Resort. The resort was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. Palm trees lined the entrance. Soft lights glowed along the pathways. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Guests moved through the halls in linen clothes, diamond bracelets, and calm voices, as if the world had never once slammed a door in their faces. Eleanor arrived before sunrise every day. She cleaned suites with balconies bigger than her old living room. She folded towels into perfect stacks. She wiped mirrors until they shone. She replaced flowers, polished counters, carried laundry, and moved quietly so guests would never feel disturbed by the work that made their comfort possible. Some guests ignored her. Some spoke to her like she was furniture. A few were kind. Eleanor noticed everything, but she kept working. She returned a guest's lost wallet with every dollar still inside. She helped an elderly woman find her medication after a room change. She gave half her sandwich to another worker named Priya, who had forgotten lunch. She smiled at the security guards. She thanked the kitchen staff. She never took anything, not even the expensive unopened chocolates guests left behind. But David saw none of that. The first time he noticed Eleanor, she was kneeling near the front lobby, helping a little boy tie his shoelace. The child's mother stood nearby, busy on a phone call. Eleanor had paused with a laundry cart beside her. The boy smiled at her and said, "Thank you." David watched from across the lobby with Celeste beside him. "Temporary staff," Celeste said, glancing at Eleanor. "They need tighter supervision during Investor Week." David's eyes moved over Eleanor's faded uniform and worn shoes. "Who approved her for front-facing areas?" he asked. Celeste gave a small smile. "The agency sends who they have." David looked away. "Keep people like that away from guests who matter." People like that. He said it without knowing her name. Eleanor heard the words as she stood. She did not turn around. She only gripped the laundry cart, lifted her chin, and kept walking. That was the first wound. The second came during the investor dinner. Hawthorne Crest had prepared for the event for weeks. The grand ballroom was filled with flowers, candles, live music, and long tables dressed in white linen. Investors flew in from New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Los Angeles. Everyone wanted a piece of David's next expansion, a line of beautiful family resorts built around wellness, privacy, and luxury. David stood near the stage, speaking with confidence. Celeste moved through the crowd like she owned half the room. Eleanor was assigned to support the service team from the side hallway. She was not supposed to enter the main ballroom unless asked. Late in the evening, a server carrying wine stumbled near the very important person table. Eleanor rushed forward with towels to help before the spill reached a guest's dress. She cleaned fast. No one thanked her. As she rose, one of the investors, a loud man named Bram Loxley, stepped backward while laughing. His elbow struck Eleanor's tray. Empty glasses slid off the edge and crashed across the polished floor. The sound cut through the music. Everyone turned. Eleanor's face went hot. She dropped to her knees at once and began picking up the larger pieces. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'll clean it right away." Bram looked down at her and chuckled. "Your staff needs training, David." The room waited. David felt every wealthy eye on him. He saw Bram's smirk. He saw Celeste's warning glance. He saw Eleanor kneeling in the middle of his perfect event, surrounded by broken glass. He did not see her bleeding finger. He did not ask what happened. He chose pride. "This is a private event," David said, voice low and firm. "Not a shelter kitchen." Eleanor froze. David stepped closer. "If you want charity, find it somewhere else. If you want to work in my resort, stop acting like a helpless street girl in a uniform." A few guests laughed under their breath. Someone whispered, "Homeless maid." The words spread fast. Homeless maid. Homeless maid. Eleanor heard it from the right side of the table. Then from behind her. Then from a woman who looked straight at her shoes and smirked. For a moment, the ballroom blurred. Eleanor wanted to tell them she had a name. She wanted to tell them she had cared for a dying grandmother. She wanted to tell them the uniform they mocked was the only thing keeping her from sleeping outside. But Nola's voice rose in her memory. "Do not let someone else's cruelty become your character." Eleanor stood slowly with the broken tray in her hand. A thin line of blood marked her finger. She looked at David. "You are wrong about me, Mr. Hawthorne." David's face remained cold. "Then prove it somewhere else." Celeste snapped her fingers toward a manager. The manager took Eleanor by the arm too firmly and led her through the service hallway. That night, Eleanor lost her shift. By morning, the cleaning agency told her Hawthorne Crest no longer needed her services. No warning. No chance to explain. No paycheck yet. Eleanor walked back to the shelter with her uniform folded inside a plastic bag. Rain had soaked her hair by the time she arrived. Her bed had been reassigned because she missed curfew after the event. The shelter worker apologized, but rules were rules. Eleanor spent that night sitting in the corner of a 24-hour laundromat, pretending to read an old magazine while her body shook from cold and shame. She did not cry until sunrise, and even then she covered her mouth so no one would hear. For the next 3 days, Eleanor searched for work. A diner said they were full. A motel said they needed someone with more availability. A private cleaning client cancelled after learning she had no permanent address. The cleaning agency delayed her final paycheck because paperwork had to be processed through Hawthorne Crest. Every closed door made David's words feel heavier. Helpless street girl. Homeless maid. But Eleanor refused to become what he called her. She helped serve breakfast at the shelter. She comforted a young mother who arrived with 2 children and 1 suitcase. She shared donated socks with an older woman whose feet were swollen. She smiled when she felt like breaking. On the 4th evening, she returned to Hawthorne Crest, not to beg, not to apologize, not to prove anything. She needed her final paycheck. The front entrance was bright with resort lights, but Eleanor used the side route because temporary workers were not welcome through the main doors. A storm had passed through the city earlier, leaving the service road wet and quiet. The air smelled of rain, gasoline, and trimmed garden leaves. As she neared the payroll office entrance, she heard a crash, then a sharp alarm. Eleanor stopped. Down the private ramp near the executive parking lane, a black car sat crooked against a concrete barrier. One front wheel had twisted sideways. Smoke curled from beneath the hood. The driver's side door looked crushed. For one heartbeat, Eleanor thought someone else would come. No one did. She ran toward the car. "Hello?" she shouted. "Can you hear me?" The windshield was cracked. The side window was damaged, but still holding. Inside, a man slumped over the steering wheel. Eleanor moved closer and saw his face. David Hawthorne. The world seemed to go silent. Of all people, the same man who destroyed her dignity in one sentence now sat trapped in front of her. His expensive suit was torn at the shoulder. Blood marked his forehead. His eyes fluttered, unfocused. His hand moved weakly near his seatbelt. Smoke thickened. Eleanor stepped back once. The hurt rose fast. She remembered the laughter. She remembered Celeste's smile. She remembered being let out like a stain on the floor. Then she saw David's chest move with shallow breaths. He was not powerful now. He was a human being in danger. Eleanor pulled out her old phone and called emergency services. Her voice shook, but her words stayed clear. "There's been a crash at Hawthorne Crest Resort, private service ramp. One man trapped, smoke from the car, send help fast." Then she looked around for something heavy. Near the loading dock, she found a metal rod used to secure a gate. She grabbed it with both hands and ran back. "Mr. Hawthorne," she shouted through the window. "Stay awake. Help is coming." David's eyes opened slightly. He looked at her. Confusion crossed his face. "You," he whispered. "Yes," Eleanor said, raising the rod. "Me." She struck the window. Pain shot through her arms. She struck again. The glass cracked. Again. The crack spread. A security guard appeared near the top of the ramp, frozen. "Help me!" Eleanor shouted. "Do not stand there. Help me." The guard ran down. Together, they broke enough glass for Eleanor to reach inside. She unlocked the door, but the frame had jammed. The guard pulled from outside while Eleanor leaned in, unbuckled David, and kept speaking to him. "Stay with me. Keep breathing. Look at me." His voice was weak. "Why are you here?" Eleanor's jaw tightened. "To get paid." For a second, even through pain, David almost looked ashamed. The guard pulled harder. The door groaned open. Eleanor helped guide David out. He leaned heavily against her, his weight almost knocking her down. She smelled smoke on his jacket. His hand gripped her shoulder, as if she were the only solid thing left in the world. They dragged him several feet away before the smoke grew darker. Paramedics arrived moments later. As they placed David on a stretcher, his fingers caught Eleanor's sleeve. He looked at her with eyes full of pain and disbelief. "The maid," he whispered. Eleanor looked down at him. "My name is Eleanor." Then they took him away. That moment should have ended their story. It did not. David woke in a private hospital room with white walls, soft lighting, and flowers arranged beside the bed. His head ached. His ribs hurt. His memory returned in pieces. Rain, the ramp, smoke, Eleanor's face beyond the broken window. Her voice. "My name is Eleanor." Celeste was the first person at his bedside. "You scared everyone," she said, standing near the window in a cream coat. "The board is already worried. Your father is furious you drove without security." David looked at her. "Where is the woman who helped me?" Celeste paused. "The temporary maid?" "Eleanor." Her mouth tightened. "She left after giving a statement. Security has it handled." "I want to thank her." Celeste folded her arms. "Send a card. A check. Do not make this dramatic." David closed his eyes. A check. That was how he solved everything. Money in place of apology. Flowers in place of remorse. Distance in place of humility. His father arrived later. Aldrich walked in with the same cold control David knew too well. You were careless, Aldrich said. David stared at the ceiling. Good to see you too. Do not joke. Investors are asking questions. Celeste is handling damage control. We will release a statement thanking Resort Security for quick action. David turned his head. Security did not save me. Aldrich's eyes narrowed. David said, Eleanor Wren did. The maid? The woman I insulted. Aldrich exhaled through his nose. Do not start turning guilt into weakness. Pay her. Move on. David looked at his father and saw something for the first time. He saw the source of his own cruelty sitting in a fine coat beside a hospital bed, more concerned about image than life. David remembered Eleanor's bleeding finger in the ballroom. He remembered how she stood before him and said he was wrong. He remembered how she chose to save him anyway. A strange heaviness filled his chest. He had almost lost his life. And the only person who ran toward him was the one person he had given every reason to walk away. Before we go further, welcome to Romance Tales with Mr. Kingsley. If you love emotional stories about love, forgiveness, family, and life lessons, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. When David was discharged, he asked for Eleanor's file. His assistant brought it with care. Temporary employee. Cleaning agency hire. No complaints. Commended twice by guests. Returned, lost jewelry. Assisted, elderly guest. Removed from schedule after investor event. Under address, the file listed a shelter intake center. David stared at it for a long time. The words he had thrown at her came back like a verdict. This is not a shelter. He sent flowers to the shelter. Eleanor refused them. He sent a check. She returned it. He asked the cleaning agency to offer her a permanent job at triple pay. She declined. For the first time in his adult life, David Hawthorne's money failed to open a door. So he went to the shelter himself. It was early morning when he arrived. The building stood between a thrift store and a closed pharmacy. Women lined up outside for breakfast. Some carried bags. Some held children. Some looked at him with suspicion as his black car pulled to the curb. David almost stayed inside. Then he saw Eleanor through the window. She was pouring coffee into paper cups. Her hair was pulled back. She wore a plain sweater, no makeup, no jewelry, except a small silver cross. She smiled at an older woman and touched her arm gently. There was no performance in her kindness. David stepped out of the car. The room quieted when he entered. Eleanor saw him and stopped pouring. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she set the coffee pot down. If you are looking for attention, Mr. Hawthorne, the resort has better lighting. A few women nearby hid smiles. David deserved that. I came to thank you, he said. You sent flowers. You returned them. I did. I sent money. I returned that too. I noticed. Eleanor wiped her hands on a towel. Then why are you here? David looked around the room. Folding chairs, tired faces, children eating oatmeal, women speaking in low voices as if loud hope might break something. He had passed places like this for years without seeing them. I was wrong, he said. Eleanor's face did not soften. About what? The question was simple. The answer was not. David swallowed. About you. About what happened that night. About the way I spoke to you. You were not only wrong, you were cruel. Yes. You mocked me because rich people were watching. David took the blow without defending himself. Yes. You let them laugh. His voice lowered. I did. You called me helpless. Then I pulled you out of a car. I know. Eleanor stepped closer, keeping the serving table between them. No, Mr. Hawthorne, I do not think you know, because people like you turn apology into a check and expect pain to disappear. But money does not erase shame. Flowers do not wash away humiliation. A job offer does not fix what you did. David nodded slowly. You are right. That seemed to surprise her. He continued. Tell me what would. Eleanor laughed once, but there was no joy in it. You want me to hand you the answer so you feel better? No, David said. I want to understand what I refuse to see. Eleanor studied him. Then she pointed toward the dining area. "Start there." David looked. "What do you see?" she asked. He saw women eating. A child asleep against his mother's side. A worker handing out toast. A man repairing a leaking ceiling panel near the doorway. "A shelter," he said. Eleanor shook her head. People, workers, mothers, students, widows. Women who left unsafe homes. Women who lost one job, one partner, one house, one person they loved, some of them. Clean rooms in resorts like yours. Some serve your guests, some wash your linens. Then, they come here because their pay does not match the life your company sells. David had no answer. Eleanor's voice softened, but only slightly. "If you want to make it right, do not start with me. Start with the system that made a woman working in your resort still depend on a shelter bed." The words stayed with David all day. Back at Hawthorne Crest, everything looked different. The marble floors no longer looked beautiful. They looked polished by hands he had ignored. The white sheets no longer looked luxurious. They looked folded by women who might have gone home hungry. The flowers in the lobby no longer looked elegant. They looked like money spent where no one needed saving. David called for staff records, not executive reports. Staff records. He wanted to know how many temporary workers had unstable housing, how many employees worked double shifts, how many workers had been dismissed after guest complaints without review, how many managers punished staff for mistakes caused by overwork. His executives grew nervous. Celeste was annoyed. "This is not the time," she said as they stood inside his office overlooking the resort gardens. "Investor confidence is fragile. Your accident already created questions. Now you want to rebuild staff policy because a maid made you feel guilty?" David looked at her. "Her name is Eleanor." Celeste's smile thinned. "You are becoming sentimental." "No," David said. "I am becoming aware." That was the first time he pushed back against her. Over the next month, Hawthorne Crest began to change. David ordered a review of all temporary worker practices. He created an emergency support fund for employees facing sudden hardship. He opened unused staff housing near the resort for workers in crisis. He required managers to document incidents fairly before removing staff. He raised wages for the lowest paid workers and ended a contract with an agency known for mistreating cleaners. The first week, employees thought it was public relations. The second week, they thought it would fade. By the fourth week, David started appearing in departments he had never visited. The laundry room, the staff cafeteria, the loading dock, the housekeeping office. At first, workers stiffened when he entered. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. Some refused to meet his eyes. David did not blame them. He asked questions. He listened. He learned names. One afternoon, he found Priya folding sheets in the laundry room. She was the same woman Eleanor once shared lunch with. "You knew Eleanor Wren," David said. Priya paused. "Yes." "Was she a good worker?" Priya looked him directly in the eye. "She was better than this place deserved. The old David would have fired her for that." The new David nodded. "I believe you." Word spread. Something had shifted in David Hawthorne. Eleanor heard about it from shelter workers, former resort staff, and Priya, who called her one night with disbelief in her voice. "He came to the laundry room, Eleanor." "The laundry room?" "Asked us about shift breaks." Eleanor sat on her narrow bed above the bakery, where she had finally rented a small room. And he listened." Eleanor looked out the window at the street below. Listening was a start. But it was not love. It was not trust. It was not enough to erase the ballroom. She reminded herself of that every time David's name appeared. Then the shelter director asked Eleanor to attend a public meeting at Hawthorne Crest. David was launching a partnership with local shelters and job programs. They wanted someone with lived experience to speak. Eleanor nearly refused. "I do not want to be used in his redemption story," she said. The shelter director touched her hand. "Then make sure the story tells the truth." So Eleanor went. The ballroom looked exactly as she remembered. Same chandeliers, Same polished floor, same stage. But this time, she did not wear a maid uniform. She wore a simple blue dress, bought from a thrift store. Her grandmother's silver cross rested against her collarbone. Her hands shook as she approached the microphone, but her voice stayed clear. "My name is Eleanor Wren," she began. The room fell silent. "I once worked in this resort as a temporary maid. I cleaned rooms most guests never thought about after they closed the door. I returned lost items. I worked through hunger. I smiled while afraid. And when I lost that job, I was staying in a shelter." People shifted in their seats. Eleanor continued. "Homelessness is not always a person sleeping under a bridge. Sometimes it is the woman changing your sheets. Sometimes it is the person serving your breakfast. Sometimes it is the young mother smiling at work because she has nowhere safe to cry." David sat in the front row. His face was still, but his eyes did not leave her. Eleanor looked across the room. Do not measure people by the worst season of their lives. If you meet someone at the bottom, do not assume they belong there. You might be looking at someone who has carried more pain with more grace than you have ever needed. Before we go further, welcome to Romance Tales with Mr. Kingsley. If you love emotional stories about love, forgiveness, family, and life lessons, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The room stood in applause when she finished. David stood first. Eleanor noticed. After the meeting, she stepped out onto the terrace to breathe. The resort gardens stretched below, full of soft lights and wet leaves. She heard footsteps behind her. "Your speech was powerful," David said. Eleanor did not turn right away. "It was honest. Honesty takes courage." "So does change," she replied. David stood beside her, leaving enough space between them. "I am trying," he said. "I know." He looked at her. "You know? I hear things." "Good things?" "Different things." A small smile touched his mouth. "I will take different." Eleanor almost smiled too, then stopped herself. "Do not turn one public program into pride," she said. "You still have work to do." "I know. And do not think my being here means I forgot what you did. I do not want you to forget." That made her look at him. David's voice lowered. "If you forget, I might. I do not want to become that man again." For the first time, Eleanor saw something in him that did not look like performance. It looked like fear. Not fear of losing money. Fear of returning to his old self. That night began their slow friendship. David did not ask her on a date. Eleanor would have refused. Instead, he asked if she would advise the worker support program twice a month. She agreed because it helped the shelter, not because of him. Their meetings were formal at first. Conference rooms, reports, staff feedback, community needs. Eleanor challenged him in front of managers. David listened. When she said his housing policy left out single women without children, he changed it. When she said workers feared retaliation, he created anonymous reporting. When she said dignity was more than wages, he asked what dignity looked like in practice. She told him, consistent schedules, safe transportation after late shifts, meals for staff during long events, respect from managers, a private room for workers to rest when overwhelmed, a fair path from temporary work to stable employment. David wrote everything down. That mattered to Eleanor more than his money. Over time, their conversations changed. They began walking through the resort gardens after meetings. Eleanor told him about Nola's soup pot. David told her about his mother feeding workers behind Aldrich's back. Eleanor laughed at how little David knew about normal grocery prices. David laughed at himself and asked her to teach him how to shop without looking lost. One Saturday, she took him to a small farmer's market. David arrived in a plain sweater, trying not to look like a man, followed by security. Eleanor made him carry peaches, bread, and tomatoes. He overpaid a vendor by accident. She scolded him softly and took the change back. "You cannot solve everything by throwing money at it," she said. "I am learning that." "You say that often." "Because I am often learning." She looked at him and shook her head, but she smiled. That smile stayed with David all day. For the first time in years, he wanted someone's respect more than their approval. Eleanor also felt the change inside herself, and it frightened her. David was no longer only the man in the ballroom. He was becoming the man who walked an elderly shelter resident to a taxi, the man who sat in staff meetings without checking his phone, the man who remembered Nola's name, the man who never touched Eleanor without permission, never pressured her, and never acted as if his apology had earned him access to her heart. Still, she kept her guard up. One evening, rain flooded the street outside the bakery where she lived. The power went out in the old building. Tenants gathered in the hallway with phone flashlights. A young mother worried about formula warming. An older man needed help with his medicine. 30 minutes later, David arrived soaked from the rain, carrying bags of food, bottled water, flashlights, and a portable power station. Eleanor stared at him from the hallway. "You came yourself?" David pushed wet hair off his forehead. "Yes." "No assistant?" "No." "No camera?" He gave her a look. "Eleanor." She folded her arms, trying not to smile. "I had to check." He handed her a flashlight. "Fair?" Together, they helped the tenants. David carried groceries up 3 flights. Eleanor warmed water for the baby using the portable station. They checked on every room. By the time the lights returned, David's shoes were ruined, his sleeves were wet, and the hallway smelled like soup, bread, and rain. Eleanor stood with him near the stairwell. "You look uncomfortable," she said. "I am soaked." "You mean you are not used to being useful without a board vote?" David laughed. It surprised them both. His laugh was warm, unguarded, and boyish in a way Eleanor had never heard before. She looked at him, and something in her chest softened. He looked back. The hallway quieted around them. A drop of rain slid from his hair to his cheek. Eleanor reached up and brushed it away before she had time to stop herself. David went still. "I should go," he said softly. "Maybe." But neither moved. Eleanor lowered her hand, then lifted her eyes to his. "David." It was the first time she said his first name without anger. He heard it. He took one small step closer, then stopped, leaving the choice with her. Eleanor leaned in. Their first kiss was gentle. No rush, no demand, no grand music. Just 2 wounded people standing in a narrow hallway after helping others through a storm. When she pulled back, David looked at her like she had given him something he did not deserve. Eleanor whispered, "Do not make me regret believing in you." "I won't," he said. "You cannot promise perfection." "No," he said, "but I promise honesty." That was enough for that moment. Their romance grew quietly after that. David invited Eleanor to dinner, but she refused expensive restaurants. So they ate at a small diner where she used to work. He listened as she told him which pie was fresh and which one sat too long. She laughed when he tried to order like a normal person and failed. Eleanor visited the rooftop garden at David's private residence, a place his mother had designed before she passed. It had jasmine, lavender, and white roses. David admitted he had avoided the garden for years because it made him miss her. Eleanor touched one rose petal and said, "Grief does not leave because you lock the door." David looked at her. "Nola taught you that?" "No," Eleanor said. "Losing Nola did." Their bond deepened through truth. David told her how Aldrich measured his worth through performance. Eleanor told him how shame felt when people treated homelessness like a stain. David admitted he had mistaken control for strength. Eleanor admitted forgiveness scared her because it meant trusting someone who once enjoyed hurting her. "I did not enjoy it," David said one night. They were sitting beside the resort's quiet lake after a staff event. Eleanor turned to him. "You did not stop it." His face tightened. "You are right." She looked away. "I need you to understand that silence wounds too." David reached for her hand slowly. She let him take it. "I understand now," he said, "and I will spend my life proving I do." That would have been the start of peace, if Aldrich and Celeste had not been watching. Celeste saw the change in David before most people did. He stopped asking for her approval on public statements. He rejected her harsh cuts to staff benefits. He corrected her when she called Eleanor the Maid. He stopped attending late dinners alone with her. He stopped letting the world assume they belonged together. That wounded Celeste's pride. She had stood beside David for years, waiting for his ambition to turn into partnership. She did not love him in a soft way, but she wanted his name, his position, and his future. Eleanor threatened all three. Aldrich hated Eleanor for a different reason. She exposed his teachings as cruel. When David defended workers, Aldrich saw Eleanor's influence. When David spoke about dignity, Aldrich heard weakness. When newspapers praised the Hawthorne Crest support program, Aldrich felt control slipping from his hands. So Aldrich called Eleanor to his private office. She arrived with caution. His office smelled of leather and old power. Photos of resorts lined the walls. A ward sat behind glass. Aldrich did not offer her a seat. "You are becoming a distraction," he said. Eleanor stood straight. "Good afternoon to you too." His eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake my son's guilt for love." Eleanor's face stayed calm, though her stomach tightened. Aldrich opened a drawer and slid an envelope across the desk. "There is enough money here to start over anywhere. Leave the city. Stop advising the program. Stop seeing David." Eleanor looked at the envelope, then at him. "You think everyone has a price because you sold your heart a long time ago." Aldrich's jaw tightened. "Be careful, Miss Wren." "I was careful," Eleanor said. "I still ended up homeless, so now I prefer honest." "You will never belong in this family." "Then it is good I did not come here asking to." She turned to leave. Aldrich's voice followed her. "He will choose the company in the end. Hawthorne men always do." Eleanor stopped at the door. "Then I hope David becomes the first Hawthorne man brave enough to disappoint you." She left the envelope untouched. When David learned what happened, his anger was quiet, which made it stronger. "He offered you money?" "Yes." "Why didn't you call me?" "Because I needed to know I could face him without hiding behind you." David paced once, then stopped. "You should not have had to face him at all." "No," Eleanor said, "but I did. And now you have to face him too." David knew she was right, but facing Aldrich meant facing the boy inside him who still wanted his father to say, "I am proud of you." That boy had controlled too many years of David's life. The breaking point came at the annual Hawthorne Crest Legacy Gala. David hated the event, but Aldrich loved it. Wealthy donors, investors, politicians, and media figures filled the main resort hall. The gala raised money for community programs, though most guests cared more about being seen than helping anyone. David brought Eleanor as his guest, not his advisor, not a staff representative, his guest. She wore a soft green dress, simple earrings, and Nola's silver cross. David looked proud when she entered beside him. Some guests stared. Some whispered. Celeste watched from across the room, face bright with a smile that never reached her eyes. During dinner, Aldrich stood to speak. He praised tradition. He praised family reputation. He praised the Hawthorne name. Then he turned his gaze toward David's table. "Legacy is not built by emotional choices," Aldrich said. "It is protected by discipline, by knowing who belongs near power and who only arrives when power becomes useful." The room grew tense. Eleanor lowered her eyes to her plate. David placed his hand over hers. Then he stood. Every camera turned. "My father is right about one thing," David said. "Legacy is built by choices." Aldrich stiffened. David continued. "For years I chose reputation over people. I chose silence when workers were mistreated. I chose pride when I should have shown basic decency. And one night in this resort, I mocked a woman who had done nothing wrong." The room went silent. Eleanor looked up. David's voice did not shake. "That woman later saved my life after a crash. She owed me nothing. She gave mercy anyway. Her name is Eleanor Wren. And if this family name means rejecting someone with her courage, then the name deserves to change." A murmur passed through the room. Celeste looked furious. Aldrich's face turned hard as stone. David sat down, still holding Eleanor's hand. Eleanor whispered, "You did not have to do that." "Yes," he said, "I did." That night, Eleanor knew David had crossed a line he could not uncross. But love does not stop conflict. Sometimes it invites the truth into the open. Weeks later, Eleanor began feeling tired in a way she could not explain. At first, she blamed long meetings, then the stress of Aldrich's attacks, then late nights at school because she had finally returned to finish her social work degree. But the sickness came in waves: morning nausea, dizziness, a strange hunger at odd hours. Priya noticed first. They were folding donated clothes at the shelter when Eleanor paused and gripped the table. "You look pale," Priya said. "I'm fine." That is what people say before they fall. Eleanor laughed weakly. "I am just tired." Priya looked at her for a long moment. "Eleanor, what? When was your last cycle?" Eleanor went still. That evening, she bought a test from a pharmacy 3 blocks away. She carried it home in a paper bag, as if the whole street knew what was inside. In the small bathroom above the bakery, Eleanor waited with both hands clasped around Nola's cross. When the result appeared, her knees weakened. Positive, pregnant. For several minutes, she sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at the wall. She loved David. That truth no longer scared her as much as it once had. But the world would not hear love first. The world would hear former homeless maid, pregnant by resort billionaire. Aldrich would call her a trap. Celeste would call her a scandal. Guests would whisper that she planned it from the start. Eleanor placed one hand over her stomach. "No," she whispered. "You are not a scandal." She wanted to tell David. She also wanted one quiet day before the storm began. That quiet day never came. At a community fundraising event 2 weeks later, Eleanor stood beside David as he announced scholarships for workers returning to school. She smiled through dizziness. The room felt too warm. Voices stretched. The lights blurred. David turned just in time to catch her as she fainted. The room erupted in panic. He carried her to the car himself, refusing to wait for anyone else. At the hospital, he sat beside her bed with his hand wrapped around hers. When Eleanor woke, his face was pale. "You scared me," he said. "I scared myself." The doctor entered with a gentle smile. "Ms. Wren, we ran the tests. You are pregnant." David turned slowly toward Eleanor. She looked back at him with tears in her eyes. "I was going to tell you," she said. He squeezed her hand. "You do not have to explain." The doctor glanced at the scan report. "There is something else." Eleanor's breath caught. David sat forward. The doctor smiled wider. "There are 3 heartbeats." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Eleanor whispered, "3?" "Yes, triplets." David stared at the doctor, then at Eleanor, then at her stomach, as if the room had filled with light only he could see. "3 babies," he said. Eleanor laughed through tears. "You sound terrified." "I am. At least you are honest." He leaned forward and pressed his forehead gently against her hand. "Eleanor, listen to me. Whatever comes, you will not face it alone." Her lips trembled. "They will say I trapped you." "Let them. Your father will attack me." "He will answer to me." "Celeste will twist it." "Then I will speak the truth louder." Eleanor searched his face. "You mean that?" David nodded. "I mocked you when I should have protected you. I will not fail you again." That promise became the center of his life. David changed everything. He rearranged his schedule around medical appointments. He read books about high-risk pregnancies. He learned what foods Eleanor needed. He panicked over every symptom until the doctor told him to breathe. He hired no private chef until Eleanor approved one. He did not move her into his home until she chose it. That mattered to her. He did not rescue her by taking control. He loved her by giving her safety and choice. When Eleanor finally agreed to move into the quiet guest cottage on the resort property, she brought only 2 bags, Nola's cross, and a small framed photo of her grandmother. David stood in the doorway, watching her place the photo on the dresser. "She would have liked you," Eleanor said. David looked surprised. "Even after what I did?" She believed people were more than their worst day. He swallowed. "I wish I had met her." Eleanor smiled softly. "You did, a little, every time I refused to become bitter." David stepped behind her and gently wrapped his arms around her, resting his hands above her stomach. It was tender, clean, quiet. Eleanor leaned back against him. For a moment, there was no Aldrich, no Celeste, no gossip, no title, no wealth. Only 2 people learning how to build a family from the pieces of pain, pride, and grace. But outside that cottage, the storm was growing. Celeste struck first. A gossip blog published an article with old photos of Eleanor entering the shelter. The headline hinted that David Hawthorne's new lover had gone from homeless maid to pregnant partner. It questioned whether the pregnancy was planned. It suggested David's recent worker programs had been influenced by a woman using sympathy to gain power. The article spread fast. Other sites repeated it. Guests whispered. Board members called. Aldrich stayed silent in public, which worried David more than shouting. Eleanor read the article once, then closed the phone. David found her sitting by the cottage window. "I will sue them," he said. Eleanor shook her head. "For what? Telling part of the truth with poison around it?" "They used your pain." "Yes, I am sorry." She looked at him. "Do not apologize for their cruelty. Stand with me through it." "I will." The next morning, David released a public statement, but it was not the cold legal note Celeste expected. He recorded a video from the resort gardens. No script, no polish, just truth. "My name is David Hawthorne. Many of you have seen stories about Eleanor Wren. I will tell you what those stories left out. Eleanor worked in my resort. I treated her unfairly. I mocked her during one of the lowest seasons of her life. Days later, she saved me from a crash when she had every reason to walk away. Since then, she has helped this company see workers we ignored. She is not a scandal. She is the woman I love. She is the mother of my children. And anyone who uses her past to shame her will answer to me." The video changed everything. Some people still mocked. Many more praised her. Former workers told stories about Eleanor's kindness. Shelter women defended her. Guests she had helped came forward. Priya posted about the day Eleanor shared her lunch when she had almost nothing. The public began to see what David had once refused to see. Eleanor had never been small. People had only looked down from too high above her. Aldrich made his move 2 days later. He called an emergency board meeting. The stated concern was leadership stability. The real reason was control. Aldrich believed David's public defense of Eleanor had weakened the brand. Celeste supported the meeting. Several board members arrived ready to question David's judgment. Eleanor asked to attend. David refused at first. "No," he said. "You should rest." Eleanor sat on the cottage sofa, one hand on her stomach. "I am pregnant, not powerless." "I know that." "Then do not protect me by hiding me." David looked torn. She softened. "Your father tried to make me disappear once with an envelope. Celeste tried with headlines. If this meeting is partly about me, I will not sit outside like a rumor." So David brought her. The boardroom at Hawthorne Crest overlooked the resort's largest garden. Aldrich sat at the head of the table like a king waiting for obedience. Celeste sat to his right, calm and prepared. David entered with Eleanor beside him. Every eye shifted to her stomach. She kept her head high. Aldrich began with numbers. Investor concern, brand risk, expansion uncertainty, leadership distraction, public scandal. David listened. Then Aldrich said the sentence he had clearly saved for impact. "My son's judgment has been compromised by a woman whose connection to this family began in deception." Eleanor's fingers tightened in her lap. David stood. "No!" Aldrich looked up. David repeated, No, you do not get to say that and hide behind corporate language. Celeste leaned forward. David, this is an official meeting. Good, David said. Then, let the record show the truth. He placed a folder on the table. My judgment was compromised long before Eleanor. It was compromised by the belief that profit excused cruelty, that temporary workers did not matter. That image mattered more than people. Those beliefs did not come from Eleanor, they came from him. He pointed toward Aldrich. The room went still. David opened the folder. For the past month, an independent legal team has reviewed worker complaints, agency contracts, withheld incident reports, and settlement threats linked to policies approved under my father's leadership. Some of those policies exposed this company to legal and moral failure. Aldrich's face darkened. Careful. No, David said. Careful is what kept me silent for years. He turned to the board. I mocked Eleanor Wren in our ballroom after an investor caused an accident and blamed her. I did it because I wanted approval from people at tables, like this. She later saved my life. Since then, she has helped this company address problems we ignored because the people suffering did not have power. Celeste cut in. This is emotional theatre. Eleanor spoke for the first time. No, emotional theatre is holding a gala for community programs while your lowest paid workers need the same help you raise money to provide. Several board members looked down. Eleanor continued, voice steady. I did not come here to take your company. I did not come here to trap anyone. I came because my children will carry the Hawthorne name if David chooses that, and I refuse to let them inherit a name built on pretending poor people are invisible. Silence. David looked at her with pride. Then he faced the board again. Effective immediately, I am proposing the removal of Aldrich Hawthorne from all operational control pending legal review. I am also proposing permanent worker protection policies across every Hawthorne Crest resort, including emergency, housing, fair wages, transportation support, and independent complaint review. Aldrich stood. You would destroy your own father for a maid? David's answer was quiet. No, I would become a better father because of her. That sentence ended Aldrich's reign. The vote was tense, but the evidence was too strong. Aldrich lost operational control. Celeste resigned before the review reached her department. The board backed David's reforms, partly from pressure, partly from fear, and partly because the truth had finally entered the room. After the meeting, David and Eleanor walked alone through the garden. He looked shaken. Eleanor touched his arm. Are you okay? David gave a tired laugh. I do not know. You did the right thing. I know. But it hurt. He nodded. Eleanor took his hand and placed it over her stomach. These children will know you chose truth when it cost you something. David closed his eyes. For the first time, he felt free from his father's shadow. The months that followed tested them in quieter ways. Pregnancy with triplets was not easy. Eleanor tired quickly. Her feet swelled. Her back ached. Some nights fear pressed against her chest. David learned to notice when her smile hid pain. He learned to sit with her through discomfort, without trying to solve every feeling. Sometimes, Eleanor cried because she missed Nola. I wish she could see this, she said one night. They were in the cottage nursery, surrounded by 3 unfinished cribs. David sat beside her on the floor. She would be proud of you. Eleanor wiped her eyes. You did not know her. No, he said. But I know what she built. Eleanor looked at him. You, he said. That made her cry harder, but this time she smiled. The resort staff began treating Eleanor like family. Priya organized a small baby shower in the staff cafeteria. Housekeepers brought handmade blankets. Kitchen workers made Eleanor's favorite soup. Security guards installed extra lights near the service ramp because no one forgot where the story had turned. David watched Eleanor receive love from people his old life had taught him to overlook. He understood then that wealth had surrounded him with service, but Eleanor had surrounded herself with people. That was richer. One afternoon, while folding tiny clothes, Eleanor asked David a question. Do you ever regret it? He looked up. Regret what? Choosing me, choosing the babies, standing against your father, changing the company. All of it. David set down a small blanket and crossed the room. I regret the night I hurt you, he said. I regret every day I spent thinking power made me better than people. I regret needing a crash to wake me up. He knelt in front of her chair. But I do not regret loving you. I do not regret our children. I do not regret losing a version of my life that made me empty. Eleanor touched his face. You are not the man from the ballroom anymore. No, he said, but I remember him. That keeps me humble. That was why she trusted him. Not because he became perfect, because he stayed honest about where he started. The triplets arrived earlier than planned. It happened on a quiet dawn, after a night of rain. Eleanor woke with pain and knew something had changed. David drove her to the hospital with controlled panic, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers at every red light. At the hospital, doctors moved fast. David called Priya, the shelter director, and the medical team already on standby. He refused to leave Eleanor's side unless the doctors required it. In the delivery room, Eleanor gripped his hand with surprising strength. I am scared, she whispered. David leaned close. I am here. If something happens, do not finish that sentence. She looked at him, exhausted. Promise me our children will know kindness. His voice broke. They will learn it from you. And humility. From both of us, he said. The hours felt endless. Then, one by one, the babies arrived. 2 girls and 1 boy. Small, loud, fragile, alive. David cried the first time he heard them. He did not hide it. The first baby, a girl, had a strong cry and tiny fists. Eleanor named her Nola, after the woman who taught her mercy. The second baby, another girl, blinked up at David as if she already disapproved of his fear. Eleanor laughed through tears and named her Briar. The third, a boy, was quiet at first, then let out a cry that made every person in the room exhale. David named him Solon, a name his mother once loved because it meant warmth. When David held Solon against his chest, his whole face changed. Eleanor watched from the bed, tired and glowing with relief. You look different, she whispered. David looked down at the baby. I feel different. Scared? Completely. Good, she said. That means you understand. They matter more than control. He moved closer, holding their son carefully. You saved my life, he said. Eleanor smiled. Once. More than once. No, she said softly. I saved you once. Becoming a better man was your choice. David looked at her, then at the babies. That truth stayed with him. News of the triplets spread quickly, but this time David controlled nothing through pride. He allowed one simple photo, his hand holding Eleanor's. 3 tiny blankets. No faces, no luxury room, no brand logo. The caption read, Mercy gave us a second chance. Love gave us a family. People responded with warmth. Workers cried in the staff cafeteria. Women at the shelter celebrated like the babies belonged to all of them. Even some board members sent handwritten notes. Aldrich sent nothing. David expected the silence to hurt more. It did not. He had a family now, not built on fear. The weeks after birth were messy, exhausting, and beautiful. David learned to change diapers badly, then better. He learned which baby liked humming. He learned that 2 hours of sleep made even billionaires useless. Eleanor laughed at him when he arrived at breakfast, with formula on his shirt and 1 sock missing. You run resorts, she said, but Nola has defeated you before sunrise. David looked at the tiny baby in his arms. She negotiates harder than investors. Eleanor laughed until tears came. Those small moments healed places grand gestures never reached. David also kept his promise at work. Hawthorne Crest Resorts became known for more than luxury. The company opened staff support centers in every major location. It created a bridge program for shelter residents seeking stable employment. It funded childcare for workers on late shifts. It partnered with community colleges for education grants. Eleanor did not let David name the main program after her. "Do not turn me into a statue," she said. "Keep the doors open. That is enough." So they named it the Nola Wren Dignity Fund. Eleanor cried when David showed her the plaque. For once, a Hawthorne building carried a name that meant kindness instead of power. A year later, David proposed. But not at a gala, not under fireworks, not in front of reporters. He proposed in the shelter kitchen where he had first gone to thank her. Eleanor arrived thinking she was attending a small anniversary event for the worker program. The room was full of familiar faces. Priya stood by the coffee urn smiling too hard. The shelter director held baby Briar. Nola and Solon sat in a double stroller, waving tiny hands at anyone who looked their way. David stood near the serving table, the same kind of table that had once separated him from Eleanor during their first honest conversation. When Eleanor saw his face, she stopped. "David," he stepped toward her. "I once came into this room thinking an apology would make me feel better," he said. "You did not let me hide behind flowers or money. You told me to look at people. You told me to change. You saved my life before I deserved your kindness. Then you gave me love after I worked to become worthy of your trust." Eleanor's eyes filled. David lowered himself to one knee. "I do not want to offer you a life where wealth covers old wounds. I want to offer you a life where respect guards our love. Eleanor Wren, will you marry me?" The ring was not huge. It was a simple blue stone ring, set in silver. Peace instead of pride. Eleanor looked at the ring, then at the triplets, then at the shelter women who were already crying. She did not answer right away. David waited. That mattered. Finally, she smiled. "Yes," she said. "I will marry the man you chose to become." The room erupted. Priya shouted louder than everyone. David stood and kissed Eleanor gently while their children fussed in the background, completely unimpressed by romance. For the wedding, David offered every beautiful resort he owned. Oceanfront, mountain view, garden estate, private island. Eleanor refused all of them. "I want the community center," she said. David blinked. "The one beside the shelter?" "Yes. We can decorate it however you want." "I do not need it to look expensive." "What do you need?" She smiled. "I need it to feel true." So they married at the renovated community center near the shelter, surrounded by the people who had witnessed their lowest and best moments. The room was simple. White chairs, soft flowers, warm lights. A small aisle lined with greenery. No cameras, except family and friends. No celebrities. No investors who came to be seen. Hotel workers sat beside board members. Shelter women sat beside resort executives. Priya held baby Nola until the ceremony began. The kitchen staff brought food. The laundry team decorated the entryway with ribbons. The security guard who helped Eleanor pull David from the car stood near the back, wiping his eyes before the vows even started. Eleanor wore a modest white dress with lace sleeves. Nola's silver cross rested at her throat. Her hair was pinned softly with tiny flowers tucked into it. She carried no grand bouquet, only a small bundle of white roses and lavender from David's mother's rooftop garden. David waited at the front in a dark suit, holding Solon for a moment before Priya took him. When Eleanor entered, the room stood. David's face changed in a way everyone saw. No pride, no performance, only love. Eleanor walked slowly, smiling through tears. Every step carried memory. The laundromat, the shelter, the ballroom, the crash, the hospital, the boardroom, the nursery. Now this aisle. When she reached David, he took her hands like they were worth more than every resort he owned. The officiant spoke about forgiveness, patience, and the work love requires. Then Eleanor gave her vows. "David, the first time you truly saw me was not when I wore a maid uniform. It was not when I saved your life. It was when you finally listened. You once judged me by my lowest season, but you did not stay that man. You changed through action. through humility, and through truth. Today, I choose you, not because you are perfect, but because you no longer hide from your mistakes. I choose the father who wakes up at night for our children. I choose the man who honors workers he once ignored. I choose the heart that learned kindness was stronger than pride. David's eyes filled. Then he spoke. Eleanor, I mocked you when I should have honored you. You saved me when you owed me nothing. You challenged me when others only praised me. You gave me love, but first you gave me truth. I promise our children will never learn arrogance from my silence. They will learn respect from my actions. They will know their mother was never a homeless maid. She was a woman with courage, dignity, and mercy. And I will spend my life loving you in a way that protects your peace. By the time he finished, half the room was crying. Priya whispered, "Finally!" loud enough for the front row to hear. Eleanor laughed through her tears. The triplets chose that moment to make noise, one after another. The room laughed. It was not a perfect wedding. That made it better. After the ceremony, everyone gathered in the courtyard. Children ran between tables. Workers danced. Shelter women held the babies. David carried 2 plates of food and forgot which one belonged to him. Eleanor watched him from across the room and smiled. Aldrich did not attend. Celeste did not attend. Their absence no longer felt like loss. Near sunset, David and Eleanor stepped outside with the triplets. The community center glowed behind them. The shelter doors were open. The resort car waited at the curb, but neither hurried toward it. David held baby Nola. Eleanor held Briar. Solon slept in the stroller between them. David looked at Eleanor for a long moment. "What?" she asked. He shook his head. "I was thinking about the night of the crash." Eleanor smiled softly. "I think about it too. I thought I owned everything." "You almost lost everything." "No," he said. "I had already lost the important things. I only found them after you stopped for me." Eleanor looked down at their children. "I did not save you because you deserved it." "I know. I saved you because I refused to become cruel." David nodded. "And that choice gave me a family." She leaned against him gently. The evening air was warm. The babies slept. The people inside laughed and sang. David Hawthorne, the man who once believed wealth made him untouchable, stood outside a community center with formula on his sleeve, a baby in his arms, and tears in his eyes. He finally understood. A beautiful resort could impress people. A private jet could move a man across the world. A fortune could buy comfort, but none of it could teach him how to love. That lesson came from a woman he once mocked. A woman who had lost her home, but not her heart. A woman who chose mercy when bitterness would have made sense. A woman who gave him 3 children and a second chance at becoming human. So, if this story teaches anything, let it be this. Never judge someone by the season you meet them in. The person you look down on today might become the person who saves you tomorrow. Money does not prove worth. Status does not prove character. And love without humility is only pride wearing a softer face. David had to lose control before he found his heart. Eleanor had to protect her dignity before she trusted his love. Their triplets became living proof that pain does not need to end in bitterness. Sometimes when truth meets change and mercy meets humility, life gives back more than anyone expected. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, like this video, share it with someone who needs this lesson. And subscribe to Romance Tales with Mr. Kingsley for more emotional stories about love, family, forgiveness, and second chances. And tell me in the comments, if you were Eleanor, would you have saved David after he mocked you? Or would you have walked away?